Hey family, welcome to Sergeant Dorsey Speaks live at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. East Coast. I I've got to share this a few places, so bear with me. And as you guys come into the room, I need you to do the same thing. Share this on your timeline. Invite folks to come and listen in and um, see what it is we're talking about. Hope everybody's having a great Thursday. Lots of stuff going on. Hey, Debbie Taylor, welcome. Lots going on today. For those of you who may not have seen, the morning started off with another mass shooting. And so that's pretty much dominated the news for the most of today. And you know what's kind of interesting about that whole mass shooting is that while it was all the rage this morning, by noon, at least here, not much being said. Hey, Barry, not much being said. Back to your regular programming. And so I just think, we're at a point now where folks are a little desensitized to this whole mass shooting situation. We've got thoughts and prayers going out for everyone. And, I heard a lot of mumbo jumbo and word salad talk today about, this has got to stop. And this is once we're done, healing, because first we need to heal. And then, we got to figure out what to do. And so I'm thinking, what the heck? I heard one of the politicians here in Southern California, one of the supervisors, say that she hadn't really given much thought to what needs to be done, and she didn't want to just provide a soundbite for everyone with regards to this shooting that happened today at Saugus High School. But she needed to really, think about it and think about, what could be done. And I'm like, what the hell? Y'all haven't been thinking with everything that's been going on since what? I think it was 2012. I think that might have been Sandy Hook. It's hard to keep track. And hey, Michael, hard to go back to the beginning, if you will, with these school shootings, mass shootings, at churches, at synagogues, and movie theaters, grocery stores, warehouses, right? And, for somebody to not know what they want to do at this point seems kind of nonsensical to me. And so, I'm guessing that they didn't really have much to say here locally about what to do, because they're going to do here the same thing they did here, about a year ago in Thousand Oaks, when there was a shooting at a club that was frequented by some of the local college students. Thousand Oaks, Moore Park, I think that was the city here in Southern California. I think that was about a year ago. And then, everything that happened before then. And so listen, I said this before. Hey, Mac, I said this before, and I'll say it again, that if an entire classroom of 6-year-old children being slaughtered wasn't enough to get folks to act, and I'm talking about the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School where 20-something babies were killed, if that wasn't enough to get folks to doing something different, I'm just of the opinion that, listen, I'm staying out of some folks' business. If that doesn't move you, if that doesn't cause something substantive to happen with regards to mass shootings, then nothing will. I know I'm not the only one that's heard that crazy group of people out there who refer to folks after a mass shooting, victims, family members of those who lose their life. And today, 2 young people, a 14-year-old and I believe a 15-year-old, lost their life thus far. And when their families go on TV and talk about their loss and what it means and what they'd like to happen, you hear the crazy asses refer to them as crisis actors. And so, in a day or two, once everybody is buried and we've had 48 hours to change channel, right? They'll start talking about the crisis actors, those people pretending to be parents of the folks that died here at Saugus High School because they really didn't lose their children. You know, that craziness that they say. And yeah, ain't nothing gonna change. So, you know, it's very hard, you know, for my own mental health, if you will. I know what's best for me. And so, you know, sometimes, and this is one of them, hey, Mitchell, this is one of those times where I just have to um, not be available, take a step back. Don't get too personally invested for my own mental well being, because I believe, until they show me something different, that this mass shooting, sad and tragic though it may be, is going to change nothing. And I heard our girl Kamala, oh, she was all emotional. She was just really hot today about this. And, you know, yeah, it sounds good, you know, especially when you're running for, you know, president, and you are hot and bothered and talk about what you're going to do when you elected president, because we understand that, you know, presidents can only do so much, right? Especially if you don't have the support of Congress and the Senate and all of that, right? The House, if you don't have the support of all of them, yeah. So it's a tragedy, and my heart goes out to those that were affected in the shooting today. And I wish there would be something, and I don't know what that something is, that is going to actually cause there to be a shift change. I don't think today is it. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents. And so I just wanted to kind of yammer and get that out of my system before I got further into today's programming. And so let me begin by saying welcome, welcome to those of you that are new. And I am a retired 20-year veteran sergeant of the Los Angeles Police Department. Having spent all 20 years in patrol, I come to you weekly to talk about things that are trending in the news, breaking news, things that have happened, and I'm updating you on situations. I decipher police code talk. In other words, I explain that stuff that police chiefs, commissioners, and sheriffs try to say to us to make us okay about stuff that we see happening on a national level between law enforcement, minority communities, and poor white communities. Things that should not be happening, but they want to somehow convince all of you, because you didn't wear the uniform, that if you just only knew, if you had actually done the job, you'd understand how hard it is and what officers are facing, and you know why it was that, you know, they shot that man in the back 8 times when he ran because they couldn't catch him. You know, that stuff that they do. Well, I'm here to speak on that and explain to you exactly why none of that makes sense, because actually I did wear the uniform and I did it for 20 years. And so I see a lot of what goes on shouldn't go on. And so that's what I come to you and talk about. And so again, welcome, welcome. For those of you who are following me here on Facebook, I also am on other social media platforms. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, SGT Cheryl Dorsey. I have a YouTube channel, Sergeant Dorsey Speaks. And yeah, you can find me here, there, and everywhere. And on Tuesdays, for those of you who don't know and who haven't subscribed, shame on you. Sergeant Dorsey Speaks is my podcast. It drops every Tuesday. I've already shared with my Facebook family a link to this week's podcast. And so I spent a lot of time, and I'll just touch on it here, but I'm not going to go into it because it was a very long, involved article. And I'll share a link with you at some point regarding what has been found out here locally in the state of California, now that I believe it's SB 1421. That's the legislation that passed that allows public to get police officer records. And ooh wee, I know it's not unique to California, but we got some wingnuts with guns in the state of California. And so I'll share the link with you and talk to you a little bit about what's going on here, because some of these officers are still on the job, even though they've been involved in some pretty outrageous and egregious activity. And so we'll talk a little bit about that today. But if you want to hear the full story on that, subscribe to my podcast on the platform of your choice. And for those of you who appreciate what I do, and I appreciate you appreciating me, I have a Cash app, Sergeant Dorsey Speaks. And so you can support the show there as well. Visit my website, www.sgtcheryldorsey.com, and find out about my autobiography, The Creation of a social advocate, Black and Blue, the creation of a social advocate. There on my website, you can read the first chapter, which is entitled You've Been Warned, in its entirety. And you can also purchase my autobiography there on my website, www.sgtcheryldorsey.com. So let's get to it. Want to start off with a couple of shout outs because, I've been asking those of you to let folks know about my YouTube channel. I'm trying to increase my subscribers, my subbies. And so I believe you've been doing that because it's been steadily increasing. And so I want to welcome and shout out to some of my new subbies. MS The Dirty South, Timothy Booker, Levi 1068, B. Austin, Mark Burke, Christian Davis, George Bradford, Lori Aya, Paulette, and Lori Willis. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hashtag tell a friend. And then on Facebook, I have some new followers and new likes. Margot, Chantel Hilmick, Charles Harris, Cynthia Ruth, and Brittany Howard. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so happy that you decided to join me. I was talking a lot about these California police officers and some of the things that they've been involved in terms of misconduct. And so, listen, I don't know if it's because I know about California because I'm here, or, like I said, I don't think it's unique to California. I'm sure this stuff is going on all over, but some of these police officers in some other places are not going to be outdone. And so there's a couple of stories. It just makes you scratch your head. And so I'm going to start with one right now over in Georgia, Cobb County, Georgia. There is a brother man. Now, he is no longer on the Atlanta Police Department. He is a former police officer, and he's in jail. What this knucklehead was doing is he still had either his uniform, I get that you could keep your uniform once you're no longer on the job, and I'm not sure why they got rid of him. But anyway, he put on a uniform. And so this fool was wearing his uniform and committing crimes over there in Cobb County. And so what he did was he went into a hotel and he robbed two guests. He took $800 in cash, an iPhone that was valued at $700, and Lord knows what else from these people. This officer hadn't been on the job very long. He first joined the Atlanta Police Department back in 2017, and he was working as a patrol officer over in the southeast side. Now, his name is Justin Thorne. He's 22. And I say his name because he was a patrol officer, and maybe some of you might have encountered Justin Thorne between 2017 and now. And maybe you may have some paperwork with his name on it that you might want to sit down with a good attorney and find out if this is reason to have a case thrown out, because now we know that he's a fool. Justin Thorne is a full-fledged nut. He put on his uniform, a bulletproof vest, his hat, and he had a gun and something that looked like a police badge. Now, I don't know if it was his official police badge that he didn't turn in when he left, or if he just had, what he got from Party City. I don't know. But this fool was in full regalia when he went into this hotel and robbed these folks. And so now he's been arrested and being held on charge of robbery. So that's that in Georgia. And then that's in Cobb County. And then in DeKalb. Now listen, this dude here, another brother, he was the sheriff. His name is Jeff Mann. And Jeff Mann recently resigned. Now, let me tell you why Jeff Mann resigned. And it's not funny, but, it reminds me of when I was working. We used to have issues with this because I worked Vice also for a little while. That was a good time. I was a Vice supervisor, and there were times when I was sent on loan to Vice to be a decoy, right, to play the part of a prostitute. And so, I'd be out on the street looking like I look, trying to see who I could catch luncheon, right? And one of the things that, we did as part of Vice enforcement was lewd conduct activity in the park. And some of you may not know this, but there are locations around the world that are known. And I was told that there was like even a Yellow Pages back in the day that had all the key spots to go to if you wanted to go into a restroom, typically a men's restroom, and look for a glory hole, right? And Venice Beach was one that was in that yellow book. I worked Venice Beach. And Griffith Park was also another location that was frequented all the time. Always lewd and lascivious activity going on in Griffith Park. And so evidently, DeKalb County got something like that too, because this officer, not an officer, I'm sorry, the sheriff, this damn fool got caught. Now he got caught about 11 o'clock at night, and I'm trying to see the name of the park because maybe this might mean something to some of you. But he was in the park at 11 o'clock at night, and there was a patrol officer who was in the neighborhood. Now this park is somewhere along 9th Street, and yeah, the neighborhood is on 9th Street. I don't know exactly the name of the park, but if I come across it in the minute or two that I'm talking to you, I'll share with you. Well, you know what? Let me do this. Let me go ahead and give you the link so you can see the story. Okay, so here's what happened. So Sheriff Mann, 11 o'clock at night, he's out trolling. And this police officer sees him and wondering, what is he doing in the park at 11 o'clock? Because my guess is probably the park is closed. You know, most parks do close at a certain time. And so the officer, you know, he breaks out his little flashlight and he shines it on this individual that he's seeing walking towards him. And he notices that this individual is holding something in his hand. And it's not a flashlight. So the officer, you know, goes in, you know, a little foot pursuit of this guy, and he winds up chasing this guy. It says he chases this guy for 1/4 of a mile. So that lets you know that the guy, hey, Lawrence from Nashville, the guy that he caught in the park really did. Hey, Rochelle, Sheriff Bilal, what's up? This guy really did want to get away. He chased him for 1/4 of a mile through the neighborhood. And when he finally caught him and took him into custody, it was the sheriff. It was Sheriff Jeff Mann. And so he got arrested for lewd and lascivious, you know, conduct, exposing himself in the park. And he was banned from all Atlanta city parks for an entire year and sentenced to community service. Now, I guess, you know, the sheriff, they also were going to try to take his credentials away so that he couldn't be law enforcement. And y'all laughing, y'all stupid. You dead ass wrong for that. You know you wrong, right? They were going to take his credentials. And so he was fighting it. Now, he just resigned here recently. This happened back in 2017. So this happened a while ago. And I guess he was trying to fight it and he realized he just had to throw in the towel. So what the sheriff said is, I cannot ask my employees to abide by a code of conduct unless I am willing to subject myself to it as well. Aw, that's what he said. But that ain't what he meant, because he was fighting this thing. And he appealed the fact that they were going to take his credentials away, and he lost his appeal. So now that he lost his appeal, he went ahead and pulled the plug, and he apologized, and he said that although he is resigning, that should not be construed to suggest or imply his guilt. Well, okay, that shouldn't imply guilt, but dude, you did plead guilty, and you did have to do some community service, and you did have to stay out of the park for about a year. So I think that implies your guilt. I'm just saying. So anyway, yeah, Sheriff Jeff Mann over in DeKalb is gone now because of that. And then in Dallas, let me go over to Dallas real quick. Not police related, but remember a little bit ago, there was a young lady who had been assaulted by this white guy. He was a bartender over in Deep Ellum. His name was Austin Sheffield, 31 years old. Well, they finally concluded their investigation, and now they have indicted him on 2 felony counts, aggravated ADW, obstruction and retaliation, as well as 2 misdemeanor charges, assault and unlawful carrying of a weapon. And remember, the victim, she has a very unique name, and I'm not going to even butcher it. Her last name is Lee, 24 years old, but he had hit her in the face and pulled out a gun on her in a parking lot over some kind of a dispute. It's taken a little time, but they did finally not convict, but indict. A grand jury indicted Austin Sheffield over in Deep Ellum, Texas. So that's that. Let me just look here because somebody is saying something to me and I'm trying to see before this thing scrolls and I can't see it anymore. Vernon, you said you wanted to ask, since I've been with the LAPD, you were wondering if I know about Charlie Beck. Of course I know about Charlie Beck, yes. The reason that you ask is because he is the interim police chief over in Chicago. And what's your point? I know about him, and the mayor over there knows about him, and she was good with all of that, so she made him interim anyway. And listen, I don't know. Okay, so my nose is running, you guys, hang on. I don't know this to be true, but I believe if he's over there as interim, understanding he came from California, you watch and see, Vernon, if they don't slide him into that position full time as the superintendent, commissioner, whatever it is they call him in Chicago. But yeah. So I know, I mean, it's no secret. And anybody who, I'm sure the mayor Lightfoot, she should have done her due diligence. They all know who's who in the zoo. And, there's certainly plenty of articles about Charlie Beck and the nepotism that he was involved in here, as well as the, alleged rumored side piece activity that he was engaged in on a regular basis, allegedly. All that stuff is out there. There's plenty of articles, certainly written by the LA Times about things that went on. So, yeah, but I don't know what to say about that. But good luck, Chicago. Good luck. Now, there's a young man who was recently shot, I believe, in custody death. Now, this is in Central Australia. So this just goes to show you that foolishness, excessive use of force is not anything unique. Like I say, not unique to California, not unique to the United States. This kind of stuff goes on all over the world. And so there's a 19-year-old indigenous man, and I'm going to try to pronounce this, Yunidmi, Yuendumu. I don't know, that probably wasn't even close. Anyway, he's 19. He's an indigenous man, and there's an area there in Australia, and it's called the Northern Territory. And what happened is that, according to the acting deputy commissioner over there, his name is Michael White, there was some kind of a warrant for this young man's arrest. He is a Warlpiri man. Warlpiri, I guess that's the tribe maybe that he's from, the group Warlpiri from Yunundi. I don't know. Anyway, Australia. There was a warrant for this young man's arrest, and they went to go and arrest him at his home, and something happened. There was a fist fight between this young man and the arresting officers, and the officers said that, quote, he lunged and targeted one of the officers. So, when I heard that, it just sounded to me like, code talk, right? He lunged and targeted the officers, and they said they thought he had a weapon. Now, they didn't say what the weapon was, but at the end of the day, this young man wound up dead. And so there was a big investigation. They said that this young man, his last name is Walker. First name is hard to pronounce, so I'm not going to try. But Mr. Walker was transported to the police station, and they didn't get him any medical treatment, at least not right away. And he ultimately died as a result of whatever injuries it was that he sustained. Now, I don't know if it was because he had been, assaulted by the officers, or because he was assaulted and shot. I don't know. It's not really 100% clear. But what is clear is that he passed away as a result of it. And so they were calling it an in custody death. And the family, had some concerns, and they made a stink about it. And so now at the end of this investigation that was opened up, they have arrested one of their constables. They call the law enforcement officers over their constable. So over in the Northern Territory in Central Australia, they have arrested 28-year-old Zachary Wolf, and he has been charged with murder. Now they're saying for the shooting of this 19-year-old indigenous man, last name Walker. Kumanje is what it looks like. Kumanje Walker, 19 years old. Anyway, so that's going on in Australia. So listen, this, police officers who are drunk with power, out of control, overzealous, you name it. It's not unique to just the US. And so I don't really know how strong that community is in terms of seeking justice and actually getting the proper redress. Must be a big deal because it made news here. And so that's why I'm able to share it with you. And then over in Florida. Every week I have something to share with you about Florida, this time in Pensacola. There was a, let's see, this happened in Pensacola, but this involved two police officers from Oklahoma who were in Pensacola, Florida on a convention or a conference. And one of the two people involved is a police chief, and his name is Lucky Miller. He's 44 years old, and he was at this conference. Oh, you guys, there's a visitor. This is my grandpup, Easy. Hello, Easy. How are you, sweetie? I hesitate to even say anything to him because the next thing that's going to happen is he's going to be in my lap. But anyway, so the police chief, Lucky Miller, 44, Oklahoma police chief, at a conference in Pensacola, Florida. Now it's about 9:50 at night. So here's what I envision. Lucky and one of his officers, his name is Michael Patrick Neely. Michael is 49, Lucky's 44. So they're at the hotel bar, right? Sunday night. I don't know what they're talking about, but they probably had one too many, I'm guessing, because they got into a fight. Oklahoma police chief, Lucky Miller, and his detective, Michael Neely, got into a fist fight at the bar in the Hilton in Pensacola. And I guess, Chief Lucky Miller wound up on the losing end of that fight, and he died. And so now his detective is in custody, and a Escambia County Sheriff's officer arrested Detective Patrick Neely for the murder of the police chief from Oklahoma. I mean, it's just crazy that all of this is going on with these police officers. But listen, rank matters not. Stupid is stupid, and yeah, that's that. So having said all that, hey Tonda, welcome, and thanks for joining me, and congratulations for those of you who can see in the thread. Tonda McIntosh is here with us, and she is the sister of Tondaleo Hall, young woman who was recently released from prison after many, many years, having been accused of endangering her children because she was in a domestic violence situation, and her father of her children had also been arrested and charged with crimes, but because she had taken a blind plea deal, Tondaleo didn't realize that she was going to wind up doing substantially more time than the actual abuser of her children. And so there was a lot said. I've talked about her situation here and shared it with you guys. I've also in the past asked you to, go on email and go on Twitter and ask for this young woman's release. And so just last week, Tondaleo Hall was released. And so, yay, I'm happy about that. And I know that you are too. I'm going to share with you this link about these California cops and convictions because, there are numerous police officers out there who have been involved in criminality here in the state of California. And California is one of 5 states where you can be a police officer even though you've been convicted of a crime. assuming that the crime is not a felony. If it's a misdemeanor, then you get to keep your job. And you know what happens a lot of times with police officers, I'm sharing the link with you now, very lengthy article. I talked in detail about it on my podcast, so I'm not going to go into a lot of it here. But some of the things that these officers were involved in is really kind of over the top. It says that they, because of this legislation that passed that gives the public access to police personnel records, 630 officers have been convicted of crimes in the last decade. And they said that there's an average of an officer, at least one a week, that's involved in something, generally DUI, generally domestic violence, are the most common causes. And so what happens is that, you know, police officers get arrested for stuff, and then, you know, they get the homie hookup and they get to plead down, even though they may be arrested and charged initially with a felony. They get the benefit to plead down to a misdemeanor, and then they get to keep their job, because the California Post Police Officer Standard and Training, the Post Commission, as long as you haven't been convicted of a felony, you get to keep your job. And it's just amazing to me the kinds of things that police officers have done here in the state of California and are still on the job. It's just bananas. It says that there are at least a dozen deputies. That means LA County Sheriff deputies. There are at least a dozen with prior convictions who are still on the department. There's a Riverside, 5 Riverside Police Department officers, one of whom is the acting chief that's been involved in criminality. And this guy's name is Larry Gonzalez. He was a lieutenant and he pled guilty to a DUI after he tore up his city car, and said he had a blood level alcohol of nearly twice the legal limit. He stayed on the job, and now he's the acting chief of police here in Riverside. And so, listen, you understand, and that's why I say all the time, when things happen and, you know, police chiefs get on TV and they start clutching their pearls and acting like, you know, this is stuff that they've never heard of, that their officers are involved in, I always say, every police chief was once a police officer. And and Lawrence, what did you just say to me? There's a police from Conway, Arkansas. Is that what you said, who was suspended for dancing naked at a party? Well, you know, when you get alcohol in police, they do stupid stuff. And I can tell you, you know, I know that to be true firsthand, because I used to be married to one who, you know, would do stupid stuff when he had alcohol in him. And that's why he's over there and I'm over here. But anyway, I digressed. Yeah, so there are police officers who've been involved in some pretty outrageous activity. 4 police officers on the San Diego Police Department that have been involved and convicted of crimes. There is a officer on the Compton Unified School District Police Department who has been involved in and convicted of child endangerment. Now, how this donkey is able to be a school resource officer in Compton is beyond me. But for my Compton family, his name is Dante Green. If you have children anywhere in the Compton Unified School District, you might want to ask your kids, do you know Resource Officer Dante Green? He would be one to watch. He's still on the job. San Jose has a police officer by the name of Jeffrey Enslen, Enslen, who was charged, convicted, felony grand theft. In other words, he's a thief. He's still on the job. That means if this officer stops you in San Jose, you know, he might, you know, ask you for your ID or tell you to give you his wallet and go through it looking for ID and take something else, or catch you drunk, you know, and you're not paying attention. And when he takes your property to book you into the jail, you wind up getting out of jail a few dollars lighter than when you went in. All that stuff is like liability, financial liability. And I don't understand how these police officers are able to keep their job, even though it is a misdemeanor crime that they've been convicted of. But nonetheless, lengthy article. You have the link. You can read it. And if you see any names that sound familiar, you may want to make a phone call and see about getting some representation, is what I'm thinking. Okay, let's see. What else do I want to share with you? Um, Scrolling through this article because I was going to read it to you, but then I put it on my podcast because it's very, very long. Um, Hang on. I'm still scrolling, y'all. Also, in this article, at the very end of it, for those of you who don't have the patience to go through it all, they have a list of several officers who were sources of this information. And there are about 39 names. And I think it would be helpful, like I said, for you to know the names of these officers, depending on, it doesn't really tell you what department they came from, but they're here in California, and they are charged with everything from battery to soliciting a lewd act, second-degree murder. This guy's name is Matt Ferris. He's been charged and convicted of second-degree murder. He's still on the job. Blair Christopher Hall, first-degree murder, still on the job. So filing a false report, in other words, lying. Walter Gutierrez, still on the job. Michael Patrick Leary, grand theft. He's a thief, still on the job. So take a look at the list of names, because again, I think it's important, for you guys to know who these people are, because they're still out there. They're still policing. They're still carrying guns. It doesn't make sense to me. I think absolutely they are a liability to their departments, to the city in which they are employed. But, I guess if these departments like it, then we should love it. I don't know. They all live to offend again, and it's not until they do something that makes national news, or until they hurt someone seriously, that some of these police departments take action. And so all of this would be grounds for a few more zeros on the end of that settlement check if a department knows that they have a problem officer in their ranks and they allow them to stay. So I share that with you so that you too will know, so that you can educate yourself in the event you have encountered or do encounter some of the names that are mentioned here in the state of California. And while that is primarily California, only California, I'm sure that that's not unique to California. And so I would encourage everyone where you live to see what information is available in your town regarding police officers who have prior convictions and are still on the police department. It's important to know. You need to know. So that's it, family. You guys have a great rest of the week. And tomorrow, I don't know about you, but I'll be glued to the television. More impeachment hearing testimony on tomorrow. Maria Ivanovich, I think is her name. Ivanovich is her last name. Masha is what they call her. Will be testifying on tomorrow. And for those of you who may not already know, but there are now 2 witnesses to a conversation that little Tink Tink had with Ambassador Sondland over the cell phone in a Ukrainian restaurant, which is crazy. Sondland called little Tink Tink in the middle of the night to tell him what was going on, because if it's lunchtime in Ukraine, it must be 2 o'clock in the morning here, and he's up all night watching 7 televisions, right? So the fact that somebody could pick up a cell phone and call his dumb ass and tell him something in the presence of others who hear him screaming like an old person might do on a cell phone in the middle of the night is bananas. So that will be heard tomorrow in private session. And then we may hear from that person or the 2 people who said that they know about that telephone call on next week, because testimony and depositions will be heard for the public again next week. So that's it for me, you guys. Hey, Dwayne, have a good evening, sir. And in case you guys are wondering what I'm wearing, I don't know if you are or not. I didn't even get to say because I just started yammering, but I'm representing my skate club tonight, Sexy Kitty Skaters. For those of you who don't follow me on Facebook, you may not know, but I'm a roller skater, and this is my crew. And that's my little moniker, Brown Sugar. We all have little monikers. That's me. And I'm repping my skate crew tonight. So that's it. That's it. You guys be good, be safe, have a great rest of the week, have a great weekend, and we'll do this again on tomorrow. Don't forget, visit my Sergeant Dorsey Speaks YouTube channel, subscribe, stop by, listen to the podcast, hashtag tell a friend. And unless there's breaking news, something really, really important, I'll see you on next week. Be good. Be safe.